Well, the big question today is, am I going to be able to keep my cool while talking about this story? Place your bets now, and I guess we'll find out together by the end of the video. My name is Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective. Before we get into whether I'm going to rage cry or just rage, I want to let everyone know that I turned on channel memberships. You can click the join button below to find out more, and please stick around until the end of the video where I will be giving a special shout out to all of my new channel members. I'm so excited. We are again today talking about homelessness, but this time I'm not talking about some hateful comments uttered on Fox News by the ever-revolving roster of frat boys eager to promote the most vile and sickening, dehumanizing ideas imaginable. No, we're talking about a self-identified member of the Democratic Party and District Attorney of San Francisco, Brooke Jenkins. San Francisco continues to dominate the headlines for their ongoing struggle to assist the growing number of homeless in the city. But they seem to have a government right now that is more keen on punishment for our society's most vulnerable. And that was made clear during an hour-long discussion hosted by ABC News featuring city and community leaders like the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, the police chief, William Scott, and the aforementioned District Attorney Brooke Jenkins. Now, this clip is going to kick off with an ABC News reporter. His name is Phil Metier, and he's going to be referencing a recent poll from the Department of Emergency Management, which found that a sizable number of homeless people during 2023 refused shelter offers when they were approached and offered it. We'll get into that poll after this clip, but I want you to get to the framing. I want you to see the framing from this reporter before we even get to DA Brooke Jenkins's response.
So, question, District Attorney Jenkins, is there anything legal that can be done for that 50%? That's half of the homeless population in San Francisco that just basically says, I don't care how many times you come out and see me this, I don't want to go. Is there any, what's the recourse?
First, let's take on what this reporter said. For that 50% that basically says, I don't care how many times you come out and see me, I don't want to go. What a way to frame the poll he's referencing. I don't care how many times you come out to see me, I don't want to go. This may come as a surprise, but this information is not in the poll. And I'll put a link to it below so that you can check it out for yourself. But this poll wasn't tracking how many times specific people are refusing to move to shelter when offered. Let's actually see what's in the poll. According to reporting from KRON-4, a local news station in the Bay Area, how many people experiencing homelessness in San Francisco have refused to sleep in a shelter despite being offered city services? On Thursday, the city's Department of Emergency Management released new data gathered by its Healthy Streets Operations Center. In 2023, HSOC teams approached and engaged with 2,344 unsheltered people living on the streets. Of those 2,344 people, 1,065 accepted shelter services. 54% of people experiencing homelessness, or 1,278 people, declined offers for shelter. So this is key. When we look at the number the reporter is referencing, it's how many people refused to sleep in a shelter. And I've talked about this ad nauseum in my previous videos, but there are many good reasons for people to not want to sleep in shelters. And when you actually take time to speak to the unhoused, they will tell you those reasons, whether it's wanting to retain control of their possessions, whether they've experienced trauma in shelters in the past, including sexual or physical assaults. Maybe they don't want to be separated from their loved ones. Maybe they don't want to sleep in a room filled with hundreds of strangers. And of course, some people even report better control over their psychiatric symptoms when they are outside of a shelter environment and in their own tent. And of course, we have the issue of relationships. Social workers are going out, they are connecting and talking with the homeless in order to build relationships of trust so that they can then refer people to housing and have those people trust that it's going to be a good situation for them. It requires relationship building, which takes time and investment and money. And that isn't to say that no one wants to be in shelters. It definitely works for people who choose it, who want it, who accept it. But you don't hear any of this from the reporter hosting that roundtable with the city's leaders. His priority is, how can we force people off the streets so we no longer have to see visible poverty as we go about our day? And it gets worse because here is where DA Brooke Jenkins enters the chat. And remember, the question is there anything legal that can be done to force the homeless from their encampments and off the streets?
Is there any, what's the recourse?
So I think the recourse is obviously outside of the criminal justice system, but...
Is it?
It is. I mean, the criminal justice system is...
somebody can just say, no, I'm camping here.
Well, no, they have to be made to be uncomfortable, is the truth of the matter. We cannot make it comfortable for them to pitch a tent on our sidewalks and stay. And so that's the theory of being able to now respond and say, you have been offered shelter, you have refused it, now you must move. And we have to stay vigilant.
Then that would be the police chief. You'd be the one out there telling them to move, right? Your force?
They have to be made to feel uncomfortable. We cannot make it comfortable for them to pitch a tent on the sidewalk. Honestly, what world are these people living in? This is very similar to what you hear on Fox News. I've heard Jesse Waters numerous times make the remark that people choose homelessness because it's easy. And yet you don't see any of these people choosing to move into the street, do you? Where everyone walks by you and treats you like you and your pain and your suffering are invisible, non-existent, or worse, like it's your fault. Like you are a failure and you should be removed from public spaces where the public doesn't have the burden of even looking at you. Where you're constantly worried about how to protect your few belongings and whether you can leave and go to a medical appointment or a counseling appointment or a job interview. Where you have to manage the stress of everyday life while simultaneously having zero stability, juggling where to use the bathroom, where to get clean, how to prepare your food, how to prepare for the weather. And it's winter. How to stay warm. Here in DC, I see people laying on subway grates so that they can get the briefest reprieve in the form of hot air being pushed up from the metro for a few seconds, a few times an hour. How comfortable. How cozy. A life anyone would choose, right? This will never fail to amaze me, never fail to make me absolutely sick with rage when people in power, people on a stage running the city with a massive news network's microphone pinned to their chest and still failing the most basic test imaginable. When Brooke says the recourse is outside the criminal justice system, I think she's right. But she isn't referencing why or giving any appropriate context for that statement. And I want to turn again to KRON 4. San Francisco is currently under a federal injunction that states, as long as the city's involuntarily homeless population is larger than the number of shelter beds available, it cannot force a person to move from a public space. The federal case, Coalition on Homelessness versus the City and County of San Francisco, blocks the city for enforcing laws prohibiting camping, sitting, or sleeping. John T. Doe, an attorney for the Racial and Economic Justice Program at the ACLU of Northern California, said, yes, we have a serious homelessness problem in San Francisco, but forcing people who have no access to shelter to move from block to block is not the answer. According to the Coalition on Homelessness, about 4,000 people are forced to sleep on San Francisco's streets at night because temporary shelter beds are at a functional capacity. Where was this context from the reporter? Where was this context from the mayor, from the DA, from the police chief? I know ABC7 is capable of reporting these facts because, oh, what's this? Here's the article that we're referencing about the roundtable with city leaders on their website from December 5th, 2023. Now let's scroll down here. It has a section there for related stories. And what's that second one? A look at SF's struggle to clear homeless encampments as hundreds wait for shelters. Wait a minute. You mean hundreds of people are waiting for shelters? But I thought they were all living it up in their encampments, ABC7. You mean to tell me that that isn't the case? What is the date of this article? Maybe it's a few years old. Oh, does it say November 30th, 2023? Just a handful of days before our informative roundtable? Wow. Let's see what this report is all about.
San Francisco has about 10,000 units of housing for individuals experiencing homelessness, but just 2,300 units of housing for families. But as demand grows, wait lists for housing and emergency shelter get longer.
Our shelter system is about 91% full.
Can you get shelter on the same day that you need it?
Yes, often you can.
Often, not always.
Not always.
What about families?
Most of the time, families can get an emergency placement the day they need one, and it can take a few weeks to get a single room.
Weeks?
Mm-hmm. And that's why we have the emergency.
Why so long?
Because our long-term family shelters are pretty well occupied.
As of November 29th, 2023, there were close to 500 pending shelter waitlist applications. The city prioritizes who gets into a shelter.
So quickly, a few highlights from that. The shelter system is 91% full. As of November 29th, 2023, there were almost 500 pending applications on adult shelter waitlist. It can take weeks to get a place to stay. Oh, and that's not all.
But Jose Torres was candid. He said there's not enough space for everyone in need. How do you do this job when there is not enough shelter, as you say?
It's difficult. It's difficult to talk to people and not have enough to offer.
In San Francisco, Luz Peña, ABC7 News.
Straight from the mouth of a person who is out on the streets working with the unhoused to get them shelter. It is difficult to get people housed when you don't have a lot to offer. So again, I ask, where was all this context in that ABC7 roundtable? Why the emphasis on the number of homeless people who turn down offers of shelter and not an emphasis on the ways the city is failing to allocate funding and resources to reduce waitlists for shelters, or increase capacity and access to shelters, or to ensure access to affordable housing? We know that research shows the best way to end homelessness is to ensure access to affordable housing. So where was the discussion about this? I guess it's easier to simplify it and lay blame at the feet of those who are victims of the broken system, rather than using our power and privilege to dismantle that broken system and work to rebuild one that actually does good. I know which side of the equation I'm on, and I will keep pushing so that we can get those who hold views like DA Brooke Jenkins out of their positions of power, since they're only standing in the way of progress. If this topic interests you and you want to learn more, you can check out my recent videos on homelessness, including my recent deep dive on Housing First, or my video covering the largest representative study of homelessness since the 90s, or another video I did on the horrifying approach to clearing encampments here in DC and elsewhere. I'd love to know what you think about all of this. You can comment below or call and leave me a voicemail, 657-464-7609, or send an email to idoubitit@dollemore.com. Now is the time you've all been waiting for. We get to thank the people who help make this work possible, the channel members. A special shout out to Wicked Good, Pamela P., Roy T., Kim M., Alexio P., Sean R., Eduardo, Tom C., Brett M., Shamari, Intuitions, Lightworker, Lynn L., Greg G., R. Levasseur. If I messed that up, I apologize. Please correct me. Marie D., it wasn't me. I was framed. I tell ya, framed. Janine, Matthew H., and Chevalier. Hopefully I pronounced that one right as well. Of course, correct me. I love to be corrected. I need to be corrected. It's why you became channel members. You want to correct me, so do it. Thank you for supporting this work and this growing community of like-minded, passionate people who want to get their hands dirty and talk about the big stuff. Take care, and I will see you next time.